Right.
All right, so I don't know if you want to start or you'd like me to start.
Maybe Gail, you can give an overview, and then we'll introduce our team, and then we can probably do introductions to the group, which could take some time. So, I guess
Okay. All right. Well, I'm Gail Henriksen. I'm the Community Development Director for Clatsop County. And there's also some other county staff here today. County Manager Don Boone is here. Julia Decker, our Planning Manager, is here. Kyle Sharpstein, who is our Fairgrounds Manager, is here, and Ian Sissom, our senior planner, is also in attendance. And I don't know if the county manager has a few words to say in a minute or so, but I want to thank everybody, first of all, for the time that you have agreed to commit to work on this project. I think it's an incredibly important project, especially at this point in time in Clatsop County, where we are facing a lot of different challenges, whether it's from the Habitat Conservation Plan or changes due to the upcoming FEMA biological opinion implementation. We know there's a housing crisis. We know that there's some exciting projects going on. CMH is one of those projects as well. But it's a long overdue look at our economic development strategies, I think, on a countywide basis. And the last time we really did a holistic look at this was back in the 1980s. So obviously our goal 9 in our comp plan and our look towards the future is a little bit out of date. So this is something that's really needed, and I'm very excited to be working with all of you. And I'll turn it over to County Manager if he has anything that he'd like to say as well.
Thanks, Gail. I appreciate that. Well, Gail just said everything that I would have said, so thanks for being a lot more efficient. I just want to thank everybody for participating. This is a really meaningful process, and a lot of important questions and hopefully answers will come out of it. We have some interesting challenges ahead of us, and obviously having a strong economic base to our communities is a very vital part of community livability. So thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thanks, Don. As an agenda here, and hopefully you got the agenda ahead of time. The primary purpose of this meeting, since we haven't really started on this project yet, we're just getting going, is to discuss basically what is involved in a Goal 9, give some understanding of what you should expect going forward. You, as representatives of the community, we really typically rely pretty heavily on these tax advisory committees, just because you really understand your community much better than we do. Both now and actually by the time we're done, you'll still know your community better than we do. So what we want to do is tap into your knowledge of what's going on. Have you help us read the tea leaves. We'll be collecting a lot of data, but having you help us interpret that data and understand what it means, what we're seeing, make sure we get this thing right. And so we'll walk through today is a little bit of an overview of what is involved in the scope, what a Goal 9 actually does. Talk about the approach that we use. We've got Brian Veracchione from McKenzie, who's going to be helping on the buildable lands inventory, and Brendan Buckley in my office, who's helping me with the EOA. We'll have Brian talk a little bit about the buildable lands inventory approach. We'll talk about some of the target industry approaches and what we'll be doing in the forward, and get a little introduction on your statement of economic objectives, because that's a key piece. One of the things you get to do with the Goal 9 is talk about what you actually want to be, what you're trying to accomplish. And that's much more loose than it is in a housing needs analysis, where you have a very prescribed approach. In economic opportunities analysis, you're allowed to aspire to things. So you're allowed to take a look at what you hope to see happening in the future, and then make sure your land use system is actually consistent with and supportive of that happening in the future. It gives you some latitude to really play with issues like land supply, rezoning, and deal with some of the issues you're looking at, as Gail alluded to as well, with some additional restrictions potentially emerging on some of your industrial properties. So with that, I'm going to try to start sharing here. Let's see.
Jerry, should we finish the introductions?
Oh yeah, if you guys, we can go around actually the room before we start the sharing maybe, and people can give us introductions, so I can put a name and a face together and understand what your role is. Now I know everybody, the problem with Zoom is everyone's face is in a different place. So maybe I'll start with David Reed.
Good afternoon, David Reed, Executive Director of the Astoria Warrenton Area Chamber of Commerce, representing roughly 600 local businesses.
Great. Kyle Sharpstein.
I'm Kyle Sharpstein. I'm the Fairgrounds Manager for Clatsop County.
Okay. Brett.
Hi there, I'm Brett Estes. I am the North Coast Regional Representative for the Department of Land, Conservation and Development.
Thanks. Kevin.
Good afternoon. Oh, which Kevin?
Oh, sorry,
There's
Kevin
two
Lay.
Kevins here.
You're the right Kevin that I'm on my screen. I know it's different.
Okay. All right. So I'm Kevin Leahy. I'm the Executive Director of CEDAR and the EDC Director for Clatsop County. I also serve as the Associate Vice President of Clatsop Community College Center for Community Business and Workforce Development, all the non-credit, and also our Small Business Development Center. I'm the director here for 12 years.
Good, thank you. Eric Thorson.
Hi, I'm Eric Thorson. I'm the CEO at Columbia Memorial Hospital.
Okay, good. Melanie.
Melanie Olson, Regional Development Officer with Business Oregon, representing the state's Economic Development Agency on the Governor's North Coast Regional Solutions team as well.
Great. We like to rely on Business Oregon when we can. You're actually specifically called out in the Goal 9 issues as a resource we're allowed to depend on. So your statements actually have a lot of bearing. We get to cite you and use you as an authoritative source. So it's helpful.
He's phenomenal.
Right. Sarah.
Hey there, I'm Sarah Liu. I went to Columbia Pacific Economic Development District. We're also regional economic development covering Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook County.
Thanks. And I don't know, Jay Delgado. Good.
Hello, my name is Juan Delgado. I'm
Juan,
the manager. I'm the manager for Pacific Seafoods in Warrenton.
Okay, thanks. And Tamara.
Hi, Tamara Roberts with Martin North and Hospitality in Cannon Beach, a brewery and a farm as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. I don't know what the Kajulala. I'm not sorry.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Mark Quila. I'm a Clatsop County Commissioner. I'm not at AOC today, so I thought I'd sit in and.
Oh, okay, great.
And then also I'm the Foundation Director at Columbia Memorial Hospital. But I really would appreciate everybody for taking the time to be a part of this process, and I'll just probably stay out of it. So thanks.
Okay, so, Spencer.
Spencer Kyle. I'm the City Manager in Seaside.
All right, great. Chris Nimblewell.
Good try. Chris Nimblewell, co-founder of Fort George Brewery.
Oh, excellent. One of my favorite places. Kevin. You got you're.
Oh, good morning. Kevin Lacoste, President, Clatsop Community College.
Great. Ian.
Hi, Ian Sisson, Senior Planner for Clatsop County. I'm mostly just here listening in today, but very much looking forward to hearing from everyone and looking forward to the outcomes of the process.
All right, great. And Christy.
Christy Ward, Georgia Pacific. We make Angel Soft bath tissue, Brawny paper towels, Sparkle paper towels, Vanity Fair napkins. We're a consumer products company.
Great. Let's see, who am I missing? Christopher Farrar.
Hi, I'm Chris Farrar. I'm the chair of the Clatsop County Planning Commission. I'm just here to listen today, see what you're doing. Thanks.
Thanks. And Julia Decker.
Hi, Julia Decker, Planning Manager, Clatsop County Community Development.
All right. Yeah, I shouldn't put enough time in the agenda for introductions, but we've got a large group, and apparently it's larger should we not have a conflict in our meetings. We're going to try to keep it where we don't have too many meetings as a group, so we don't take too much of your time, but I do want to encourage anybody to contact me directly or contact me through Gail if we need to, if you've got specific information you'd like to share. by and large, all information we find useful. I mean, we don't always use it, but we prefer to have it than not have it. So, you know, we're happy if you overshare. We'll see if it's relevant or not, but it's great to have all the data. So with that, I'll try the screen share again here. All right. Ta-da. All right. Okay. So it's our technical advisory group #1 meeting. Got the date right finally. We talked a little bit about objectives, the project overview, the approach to the EOA. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. The land inventory approach, which we'll have Brian of McKenzie talk about. We'll talk about your current economic objectives and get some feedback and some of the target industry discussion at a preliminary step. All of this will be fleshed out later. As we get later in the project, we'll have a lot more data to talk about. Right now, it's really more process and expectations. So what is an EOA? It's basically identifying your local economic goals and target industries, what you want to see happen, what you want to be. You forecast your economic trends and job growth. So you generate forecasts of what you think is going to happen over a 20-year horizon. You do an inventory and evaluate your land for employment to see if you have an adequate amount of employment. And it's not just adequate in aggregate, but do you have the right types of sites? Do you have the right sizes of sites? Do they have adequate infrastructure that's required for is the match right to basically accommodate the anticipated employment, economic trends, and job growth? You formulate some new policies and action items to basically help you get to where you want to go. And then there's an update of the comprehensive plan addressing the Goal 9. And again, this was last done a long, long time ago. So there's going to be a lot to update probably. So we're not going to talk about this. Take a look at the schedule. This is a kickoff meeting here in sort of mid-November. We'll be expecting the demographic and market trends and some stakeholder outreach and employment growth forecasting and target industry work to be going on through the holidays, basically. We're expecting to have some meetings with the staff in the interim. And next time we would meet which is the Green Stars with the Technical Advisory Committee, we're expecting that to be late January, at which point we should have employment data, target industry data, all the background information that we can get, as well as some draft buildable land inventory findings to start reviewing with this committee. That's going to be a meeting where it's going to have a lot of content because we'll have a lot to cover, and we'll hope to get a lot of feedback from the group as well at that time. Then we'll be starting to match the sites to what's needed, reconciling and refining the site requirements and site demand, pulling together the trends analysis, and coming up with some strategies, which we'd review with you guys again in early to mid-April. And following that, we'd be doing final revisions to reflect that work and trying to put a package together to get in front of a county adoption process. The timeline may be aspirational on county adoption for all these pieces. These things can stretch out, but we actually prefer to set the schedule pretty aggressive and hope we can stay somewhat close to that. So for the TAC, we're going to try to keep you at 3 meetings total. We'd of course welcome participation outside of that, and we start talking about stakeholder outreach. We may be contacting some of you guys directly if we run into some issues we really could use your specific help on. We want you to help us understand the local economic conditions, provide feedback on work products, which we'll be providing about a week before every meeting. So you at least can be abreast of them, have some chance to review and provide some informed feedback, and inform other community members about the project. One of the problems we have with economic development projects and EOAs is people don't tend to pay a lot of attention to them. Sometimes that's not a bad thing, but you know, it's helpful for us that people know that this is going on. Particularly if they have something they might want to share, they have specific concerns they want to make sure are addressed. We do an EOA process. The economy and employment trends analysis is basically you take a look at what's been happening on growth and try to come up with what you're going to need from an employment standpoint. So you forecast the associated land need, translate the employment need to associated land need, which is also site specific. You take a look at your commercial buildable land inventory, your supply, you reconcile those, you develop the economic opportunities analysis, and then policies to what you're going to do about it. Usually you have findings. Sometimes the findings is you don't have the right kind of sites, you don't have adequate sites. Sometimes the findings are you've got more than enough sites of one kind and not enough of another. So you take a look at what you can do within your land use system and your policies to try to better match your actual capacity and supply with what you're aspiring to get. One of the big issues is the statement of economic objectives, which we'll get to a little bit important. It's a small piece of the overall scope, but it's important because that's really what you define what you're trying to accomplish. These tend to be sort of motherhood apple pie. You know, we want, you know, lots of high paying jobs, everybody employed, everyone can work in the community. And that's great. But you want to make sure you are specific enough in your objectives that it supports everything that comes out of it. Saying we work with jurisdictions that are very pro-growth. We work with jurisdictions that honestly don't want any growth. You can accomplish both, and there's strategies to make sure nothing happens if that's what you're looking for as well. We'll do the economic trends piece, target industry piece, and the forecasts and all the findings, and bring that stuff to you. For the forecasts, you basically, there's multiple ways. One is sort of the safe harbor. You take a look at your current employment composition within the county. By industry type, you can apply that. Then the rates from the Oregon Employment Department does forecast, 10-year forecast. You can take a look at average annual growth rates from those forecasts. If I get this wrong, Brendan in my office, please correct me because he knows more about the rules than I do. You can also take a look at your population growth forecast. If your population growth forecast, which primarily has been controlled now by Portland State University's Population Research Center, and that says you're going to grow at 0.7%, then you can take 0.7% employment growth for a growth rate overall, basically applying it to your current composition. We tend to prefer an adjusted growth forecast where you can take a look at, you know, here's what your current composition is, here's what the underlying trends are indicating are going to happen. But it, you know, the point of a target industry is in encouraging and intervening in your economic development future is that you can somehow alter those. So if you want to encourage a certain type of industry, you can achieve a higher growth rate, or at least you're going to aspire to achieve a higher growth rate in that particular industry. Conversely, if you have an industry that is showing historically decline, is forecasted to be decline, your aspiration can be that we don't want it to decline, right? So my adjusted forecast is going to say I'm not going to accept a decline in that particular industry just because the state is saying that in this broad basis. Again, the projections that are done for this industry are at the Benton, Clatsop, Columbia, Lincoln, and Tillamook County level. So it's a very large area. You could obviously deviate from that when you get down to Clatsop County specifically. And when you get to jurisdictional solutions, you can obviously get quite a bit off that. And so we went through all this. We take a look at the employment forecast. We actually break it down to space needs through square footage of employees, character, magnitude and character of need, which is really the type of real estate product you're going to expect people to want. So if I've got, you know, an expansion of hospital, I'm going to need medical office space. I'm going to need, you know, clinic facilities, whatever it is. What does that require as far as a built product? And then what does that imply as far as land needs? Office, industrial, commercial, hybrid products. You know, we're increasingly getting different products out there that sort of don't fall into the standard typologies. You're getting now, like in industrial, you've got distribution, but then you've got distribution. You've also got fulfillment, which is like your Amazon fulfillment centers have a different employment profile different composition, different site requirements, those types of things. And then when we break out the land need, we want to break it out both an aggregate need, like perhaps you need 3,000 acres, but you also need, 4 sites greater than 50 acres on seismically stable land, or you need waterfront sites, or whatever it is, some combination of mixes. Because again, when you reconcile, you want to make sure you've defined your demand discreetly enough that you can say, yes, I've got enough in aggregate, but I don't have the right kind of sites. So then I can take land use actions that basically say, I need to add a site with these characteristics to actually match my targeted industry sector that I'm trying to attract. And this is not your slide, and I apologize for this, Brian, but it's happened to have one in a dike.
Yeah, it's great.
This is all the BLIs are sort of the same, so maybe you can walk through how these are done.
Sure. Yeah. So the triangle here really is meant to convey that this is a sifting and sorting process where you start off with a pretty wide data set, and by the time you get through the process, you've narrowed it down quite a bit. So what Mackenzie will do is basically a computerized mapping exercise using our GIS software. And since this effort is specific to economic development, the first thing we do is we cast off all the land that's zoned and planned for other purposes like residential or public or open space, etc. So we can sift it down just to the areas that are zoned and planned for industrial and commercial development, and sometimes mixed use development. Then for those areas, we look at what are some of the characteristics already. A parcel may be zoned commercial, but if it's fully built out, is it really available to accommodate 20 years of economic growth through the county? Probably not. So we can cross that one off the list too. Whereas there may be some parcels that are redevelopable, meaning they've got some development on them, but maybe it's a building that's in pretty old, not so good condition. And so that might be prime for somebody else to purchase the property and redevelop or something. We kind of use as a proxy for that some assessor information based on the value of the land versus the value of the improvements, and that helps us sift through some of that. And then infill properties, those are ones where maybe you've got a 15-acre site, but only 2 acres of it are developed. And so we would want to account for the fact that there's still 13 acres that are usable. And not just cross that whole parcel off, not because there's something kind of built for it. After that step, then we start looking for things that impinge upon development potential. So wetlands, floodplains, and slope. Coastal areas, you can see looking at tsunami risk as well. And once we make all those deductions, we come up with a number that says, here's how many acres of buildable land that the county has for commercial and industrial uses. And we pat ourselves on the back and we say, good job, Mackenzie, we're done. Actually, no, then we talk to people that are at the county. As Jerry mentioned earlier, the county, we don't, right? So we're doing this from the comfort of our offices. And it's really helpful to get input from staff and from advisory committee members about certain particular parcels or areas that you know more about that the computer analysis just isn't gonna come up with. And so we could do some manual overrides. You may know that a property's just been approved for a giant development, and it's maybe even in construction, but we didn't pick up on that during our mapping exercise just because of the time lag based on our data sets. Or you may know there's a site that looks good on paper, but you can't get to it physically. There's no road there, or there's wetlands all around, or who knows what. And so we can make those manual adjustments. And in the end, after making those adjustments, we have a certain number of acres that we say is available. And then that feeds into the modeling that Jerry and Brendan will do to sort of see how the number of available acres compares to what they've forecast as the number of acres needed over the planning period.
And this is actually, when we do the buildable land inventory, this is an area that we'll spend a good deal of time in the meeting sort of going through maps. One is people know specific constraints. I understand from someone I had coffee with this morning, you guys are working on some wetland issue or brownfield issues as well. Those are always sensitive. I've never run into a property owner who's happy to have their property shown on a map as a potential brownfield site. But understanding the constraints to developing some of these, because sometimes there's policy decisions to be made. If you have industrial land that's worth $5 a square foot, and to get a roadway to it and or to mitigate a wetland or brownfield is going to cost you $15 a square foot, that's a non-viable development property. And then the strategies to getting that online may be, fishing for grants or, honestly, at that point, even low interest loan isn't going to do you much good because you've got too much to overcome. So a lot of times on these sites, you try to identify sites that are in the inventory, because one of the things that are most problematic is when you do these is most jurisdictions have what we call phantom inventory, which is they've got inventory on the thing that's still counting against them on their reconciliation and as far as their capacity analysis. But in reality, it's not available to the market, and not because of owner disposition, just because of clearly defined financial and or other development restrictions that make it very either economically unaffordable to do or really just unsolvable. We run this as well. Sometimes where the wetland is important, because if I've got to build a bridge to access the back portion of a site, which is the only developable parcel, that may make the entire piece unviable. And then jurisdictions need to make decisions about, is that site valuable enough to try to really make the investments necessary to bring it to the market at a price that it's viable at. So there's a lot to cover on the buildable land inventory. And again, I appreciate Brian going out there, because every time you release a map, it's the first thing everybody goes to, and everybody knows more than you do about at least one site.
Yeah, it usually takes a couple of iterations before we get to something that not only is legally defensible, but that people in the community think is reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, you want it to actually be right too. So we can get something legally defensible that's wrong, but we'd prefer to get it correct. And so that's where we rely on you. And then again, we talk about later when we have strategies and policies and actions to try to, help address some of the issues identified in the EOA. That's where some of this issues like infrastructure and other requirements these sites can come forward. All right, if I can get you up the hook here. We've got a couple specific issues that Gail mentioned. The FEMA biological opinion, the habitat conservation plan are coming through, how those are going to impact. We're going to have to we're going to require some of your help on this on the BLI, because we don't have a biologist on our team. You probably have one at Mackenzie, but I don't think they're budgeted to do anything. So, we're going to have to talk about some of those impacts, and they may not be clear yet at the time of this point, but at least have the caveats in there that we need to take a look at this and the impacts of these on the margin. So what I wanted to go through now, you guys actually, it looks like there was a planning exercise done adopted in 2023 that took a look at some of your Goal 9. Gail, I found this looking for your old Goal 9 stuff. It looks like you guys have worked on an update of this.
We did adopt in June of this year, the board did, and it was a very basic update. There was obviously no economic opportunities analysis. Julia especially worked very hard on this, but it was the most rudimentary in a good way, because it was just so far out of date. And we knew that we had requested budget funding to go through this economic opportunities analysis process. So we did the work that we could in-house to get us to a better point than we were working with a 40-year-old document. So
yeah, no, I mean, and it's helpful. And the reason I wanted to do this is to walk through some of these, and please interject as you feel appropriate. Just to do a quick overview of what's in this particular adopted piece, to give you an idea of what's currently in the plan, and see where we need to change it and or modify it, expand it, or maybe lose something. So for the target industry guidance that was in that plan, there was forestry, wood products, marine resources, processing plants, which is fish processing, I believe, marine processing. The visitor industry, which is all the tourism industries, and education, health services were identified as target industries. We'll run through an analysis, takes a look at some of your strengths and some of the industry growth we've had recently, and see how that affects some of this. But this is what they're currently looking at. Challenges that are identified has been reductions in forestry wood products, the seasonal nature of marine resources processing jobs, low pay in the visitor industry, dependence on natural resources, fragmented local planning, I guess a lack of coordination, insufficient industrial land in rural areas, economic conflicts over resource uses, which I think refers to some of the potential biologic issues we're going to run into, or the environmental issues with some of the new rulings. And this portion of the high number of retirees. This is actually something we're seeing in a lot of counties as the workforce ages and the population base ages, and sort of changes their need for services and changes the types of employment demands we have in these areas. And it actually drops your workforce, by the way. That's actually not an issue that's, solely with Clatsop County, but in more of the rural counties, that's become more of an issue. Very difficult to deal with. So for your general policies, your primary goal was to diversify and improve the economy. I talked a little bit about motherhood apple pie. That's your basic, yeah, we'd like to have a more diverse, robust economy, usually with, lots of high paying jobs, fit the local employment profile, all those types of things. You identified at that point, looking at economic opportunities analysis, which is what this project is. Benchmarks for economic activity is a nice piece to have, and maybe we can make that an output, some of the EOA too as well, where you try to establish metrics for what success looks like, and then you have something to hold yourself to and say, look, did we accomplish these things? Update of the buildable land inventory, that'll be done as part of this as well. There's a prioritization on telecommunication infrastructure. I know that's become a bigger issue, particularly with the remote working trend that's been going on. Same thing, this emptying out, the Portland office market. I was at a presentation at lunch today about our office vacancy at 30%, and it's worse than that. That's just all they'll admit to at this point in time. But it's actually something that really benefits a lot of more rural counties, but it also creates issues as well on workforce, on housing, because suddenly you have a broader workforce bidding for your housing resources that probably wasn't anticipated. To recognize and support burgeoning economic sectors, I'd be identifying some of those in the target industry analysis. I think we'll address a lot of this. Certainly, if there's sectors people want to make sure are targeted, we'll get to that point when we're go through this data and make sure we get those identified. Implementing the recommendations for the housing strategies report, which is again working on the affordable housing aspect, which is again is a big part of your workforce, is making sure your workforce can actually get appropriate housing. It's been particularly difficult in the Oregon coast, particularly the northern Oregon coast. And that's been an endemic issue, but I think the recognition is important, and encourage and support businesses, which is just your local businesses. Always in every economic development thing, that's one of the things you try to start with. So that's what's in your plan. you have a breakout, and if I get these wrong, Gail, since you just worked on this, feel free to modify, right? This is based off my review, and you, I'm sure, were tighter to this. You had policies for forest products, really encouraging small businesses in the forest industry, supporting public actions to support the industry, collaborating with private industry, the Port of Astoria, CEDR, and Colpac, and really encourage expanding local processing of locally grown wood fiber. This is a big issue of trying to grab more of the value add. You've got the resource, but if you can do more value add locally, it helps on your employment picture. It's been a consistent strategy you see in a lot of communities with significant timber industries, just because they've got the resource, but a lot of the money's on the processing of the resource, as opposed to just logging. And you're part of the Forest Practices Act, so there's a lot of the practices are regulated. For your marine resources, this is the new Scholar fish meal processing plant. Maybe is that where Juan, if you're working there? But these types of pieces, this is on the Port of Astoria's property, is really providing support for your marine resources, your commercial fishing fleets, to look for a lot of things to encourage methods to expand the fishery activity, scientific research to deal with some of potential issues from climate change issues, and fishery management, and monitoring. This comes up multiple times, monitoring, providing input on the effects of wind or wave energy proposals on fishing and maritime commerce. I don't know if there's specific concerns about that you guys were dealing with, but I saw it came up a few times. If you think it's going to interfere potentially, or have some conflicts with the marine and maritime
wastewater management.
Wastewater? Okay.
Big item.
Okay. This is it. This is the processing plant?
Yes.
Okay. Are you having regulatory issues with that, or?
I just can tell you one thing. DEQ wants me to bring back the water from my plant to the city of Warrenton, 29,000 times cleaner than drinking water.
Really? Oh.
Yes, that is in writing. That is in writing.
Nice of you.
But the question to DEQ is that it is okay for my children to drink that water straight from the city, but it's not okay for the seafood plant to, so we have to clean it, or how? I don't understand.
So there's not even a technology to clean it that much?
It doesn't exist, but that is our problem. Again, in writing, we have that.
All right, so there's a good policy piece to coordinate with DEQ on these issues, just to clarify them. But I see in the comments that that's been an ongoing issue within the region. So, okay, well, those are great, because we start looking at specific issues that you guys are running into, just trying to find out where these conflicts are and where we can start to approach it. Let's see. So the travel industry, we've got, I'm glad to see we have travel industry representation on here as well. For the county, they had promotion of the year-round utilization of the county fairgrounds. Looking for promotion of off-season activities, probably extended shoulder season, off-season. It's always an issue, obviously, in the travel industry, and particularly the Oregon coast, where wintertime is an acquired taste. Then support for the Clatsop Community College for programs and training for local businesses. This is actually not really travel industry. This is sort of more general, but we'll try to take a look at some of the industry sectors and the requirements for training that may be out there, in some coordination with the county, Clatsop County Community College. This goes back, they had wind or wave energy proposal industry on the hospitality industry. I don't know if it's a visual issue or something else that you were looking at. I know they were dealing with that on the East Coast. Visual impacts of some of the wave energy facilities, a little concerned about what that would do. And support of the arts for the Arts Council of Clatsop County. You had some human resource policies, cooperation with existing educational institutions for job training and programs, and supporting employers providing family wage jobs. And again, family wage job definition people typically have been using in the state has been jobs that pay median wages. You know, it's a term of art. What people think is family wage. I guess it depends on your family. Let's see. Oh, there's more stuff on the processors. Yes, many people are having trouble with DEQ on the processors. So we have a repeated. It sounds like at least in the county they're aware of the issue. I'm not sure if they're aware of DEQ, but I assume they've heard from you. For the community resource policies, basically cooperation with your economic development agencies, incorporating the Port of Astoria strategic business plan, just making sure you guys are complementing each other's efforts, and required impact assessment for destination resort applications. So I don't know if you had specific destination resort application out there that's floating, or that's just one in general, should one come around. It's been a long time since someone's done one of those. Yeah, Gail, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, maybe about 5 years ago, that was probably the last round of interest we had with the Metolius group, and they were looking to do a destination resort out here. But yeah, I don't foresee this being a very significant issue for the county.
Yeah, that comes around every now and then. It hasn't happened yet on the coast, but I mean, outside of Bandon, I guess that's a destination resort. I don't know if that went under that land use entitlement path, though. We haven't seen much of this happening even in Central Oregon of late. It's been a long time. So we're very early into the meeting, and I got to the point now where we're starting to talk about next steps. So if people have any specific issues on the policies before we get into that, I mean, I'm happy to open some of these things up, like what for forest products, marine resources, we've got the DEQ issue obviously to bring up. Are there other issues on the marine resources policies that we should have the county basically calling out potentially as things they should be trying to address?
Other than housing, you know how we are renting hotels and houses and everything, and but no, DEQ is the biggest one. Is the one that is making some of us in the seafood industry hit the brakes on investment.
Okay, it's a tough one.
Jerry,
DEQ is marginally easier to work with than the Burlington Northern Railroad, but not much. Yeah, Brett?
Hey, I was just going to note on the wind and wave energy proposals right now, the only locations proposed in Oregon are down on the southern coast, offside the Lane County coastline. There are some wave energy, wind energy proposals proposed north in Washington State, but nothing along the Oregon coast, North Oregon coast at this point in time along Clatsop County's interface.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it sounds like they just had called out monitoring just to keep an eye on it. You know, you never know where it's going. But how about for the travel industry? Are there any specific pieces that we want to make sure that we're actually monitoring in that? We'll pull what information we can on that industry, but
One thing, I don't know if this is right for this study or not. One thing that is we foresee as a significant problem for our tourism industry in Seaside is we have growing dunes on our beaches that are slowly, we're losing our visibility of the ocean from our promenade, which is significant for all of our tourist industry, and have some challenges in what we are able to do, and quite a few hoops to jump through to change that, or even possibly not have any ability to lower those dunes. And so that's something we're currently working on, but it would be helpful to understand what kind of an impact the being able to see the ocean is for the tourist economy in Seaside.
That is interesting. I've never thought of dunes between there. So, and who's the regulating group? Whose jurisdiction is the sort of the dune?
It's the state of Oregon. So I know, I'm sure Brett could talk more about it. Some of it is it's really state parks, and then I know we're working with them and with DLCD on that. As we're in the middle of updating our forward dune management plan, and so those are the two groups we're working with. But state parks is the main regulating entity. If I'm wrong, Brett, please speak up.
Yeah, you got it correct there, Spencer. State parks regulates it. There are some statewide planning rules that Department of Land Conservation and Development implements, but Spencer, as I understand it, y'all are working on your forward dune management plan and looking at that, and I understand that there may be some issues that state parks are bringing up. They're maybe providing a little bit of consternation with some folks in Seaside. That's what I kind of understood in talking to Jeff about that and working through the process. But it's between state parks and DLCD.
Yeah, I would say, but if there is an understanding of what the value of that brings to the economy, it would be helpful for us to understand that.
So I would kind of piggyback on that same thing. It'd be great if we could come up with something from this that kind of had some local numbers that kind of show what the economic impact of people coming into the community are. I know I've looked at the Travel Oregon, and the fairs groups as a whole have looked at the Travel Oregon stuff, and they all feel like those numbers are really high as far as what the impact is. But finding something that's kind of specific to our area would be good to know. It's kind of unique.
Okay. I mean, maybe we can take a look at that. I mean, are there other things people would really like to sort of see in the study? We can see if we can find a ways to get them into an EOA. Specific impact analysis of some of the tourist stuff. We can get some broad brush stuff. We can maybe get some quantification of the scale at some level. We're probably not going to get a lot of the jurisdictional, and it can be done. It's just, I don't know if we'll get that tight in this analysis, since we have you actually have a large county and a very diverse county with a lot going on. Kevin, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say that on the tourism, I'm with David there and Tamara, others. I mean, that tourism economy is like a $500 million annual, impact for our Clatsop County economy. So it's huge. And I know there's the concerns about the lower wages, but Tamara can speak to this, that like with any industry, you have the lower wages because it's an aggregate of part-time or whatever. But you think about people that over the years have like started at the lower level, but then built large businesses in the hospitality industry. So sometimes it's a little bit of a misnomer on the wages because of the part-time aspect and seasonal. But you look about people that have really made an impact and in our community on that. I also want to mention, if this is the right time or not, but also talking about, the housing's been mentioned. Very involved Cedar is with the childcare situation here in Clatsop County on committees along with Mark Quila and others. So that is a huge, with federal programs ending, et cetera, looking at ways to make that pencil out, because we have many of our employers that if you don't have childcare, you're not going to survive. So I'd say that's also a huge issue that should be addressed.
Okay. Sarah.
Thanks.
See people with bigger faces if I stop this.
Oh, I was gonna use that screen to talk back.
Oh, sorry, you want that screen back?
No, that's okay. I think I can remember. On forestry products, be really interested to know a learned opinion on how our county can work with the cross-laminated timber and the Build Back Better program at the Port of Astoria, and just connecting to those efforts. On the marine side, when chatting with people at both the businesses at Tongue Point and the Port of Astoria, the workforce and the labor needs there, and how to support our trainers in the county for those high paying jobs that are like high paying even when you're new in them. And then tourism, I don't know if I'm going to drop a bomb here, and I'm not going to like say this with an opinion, but a conversation that has been happening around transient lodging taxes and the split on how those taxes are used when we have such seasonal impacts that, you know, Cannon Beach has an extra tax so they can support their fire department calls in the summertime. I know that conversation is happening, so it should probably be considered.
All right. Well, if we want to get good turnout for a public meeting, we can put transient lodging taxes on the agenda. I've
You know,
actually been
I
in a
know
meeting
it's
that had that on there, and it took over the whole meeting.
I believe it.
Jerry, I think Chris has been trying to say something as
sorry.
well. Yeah.
Just looking at where does the fermentation sector fit into that slideshow? It feels like the fermentation sector is a pretty major employer in Clatsop County. Fort George alone has 160 employees. I know that, you know, if we have 6 breweries in town, it seems like most people continue to say their biggest headwind is dealing with our wastewater situation in Astoria and also in our county. We have a 50-year-old wastewater treatment plant here in Astoria, and it's difficult to in Astoria, the hurdles of even trying to start a new brewery or cidery or distillery are massive. I would not want to try to take on starting from scratch right now. But it's also just thinking about how that the fermentation sector fits into the presentation you were just given.
That's good, because it's not in there, and that's what we're looking for to add. And this is old again. This is built off some old stuff, and clearly between yourselves and Bowie and everybody else in there, you've got a pretty good concentration now in the county in that sector. We're never sure how to add, you know, I think it's like value-added agricultural products. I'm not sure where we put fermentation. And then we can do the fermentation sectors, a new terminology for us, but I like that. But yeah, identifying new target industries that we should take a look at. One that's already one that's established. It's probably going to show up in the target industry work because it'll show growth in that industry. But then identifying those and pulling them out and making sure that they're being supported with the land use system. Assuming it's something people like, but I don't know. You got my vote. I'm pro fermentation.
We counted it under manufacturing because a number of those breweries do export out of the county. And thank you, Ian, for putting that impact study of the fermentation industry in Clatsop County in the chat.
Oh, good. I've got to grab that. It's in the chat.
I'll get it.
Oh, you got it. Thanks, Brendan. All right.
Hey, I have maybe a clarifying question to be able to help kind of tailor some of the conversations here. You know, since this is a project for Clatsop County, you know, looking at an economic opportunities analysis for the county. Maybe Jerry, if you could talk a little bit about how this project looks at unincorporated areas in Clatsop County and then tailors into the individual jurisdictions comprehensive plans in Clatsop County. And there was some economic opportunities analysis work that's been done in Warrenton in some prior years and also in Astoria, and maybe talk a little bit kind of generally how that will bleed over into the individual cities' work.
Yeah, I appreciate this, Brad, because this was a big question internally I've had as well, because this is closer to what we would call a regional EOA, because you've got multiple jurisdictions that are actually, many of them who are required to do an EOA in any case. So you're going to have to reconcile what the existing EOAs are saying, what their industries are, what they're looking at, with a newer version of a county-wide, which is going to include a lot of those jurisdictions. You know, for the county, as far as policy things that they can do and land use actions they can do, that's going to be largely restricted to the unincorporated, because that's where your jurisdiction is. It's going to give feedback to the jurisdictions like Astoria about some of the issues they're looking at and where you think this might occur. But the county has a significant amount of unincorporated employment land as well, that's not in a specific jurisdiction. And, you know, from my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong on this scale on the expectations, is, you know, we're looking at the county as a whole, but a lot of the policy stuff is really going to focus primarily, besides cooperation on economic development issues, the things that you actually control, which is going to be the unincorporated pieces, not land use actions you're recommending Astoria take. So try to stay in your lane a little bit, but you know, it is the jurisdictions to do these things, but there are certain elements as a county. I think you guys have more strength, particularly if you're talking, you know, as a coalition of jurisdictions, talking to someone like DEQ about a water quality issue and requirements. It's good to have a group and come from a broader base, because if you're dealing, particularly you're dealing with some of the very similar issues out there. But end of the day, the counties, you know, what's not incorporated by a jurisdiction is going to be in the county's jurisdiction. And only a small proportion of that's going to be urbanizable, because an awful lot of the interior county property isn't urbanizable in any case. So you're not allowed to do urban development forms.
Yeah, and Jerry and everyone, I see this almost as a parallel process to what we're doing with the Regional Housing Task Force, where we have gone in together as the cities and the county to do an infrastructure readiness grant. We have gotten funding through DLCD, and we're moving forward with that together in unison. Obviously, our codes will be different and our communities will be different in how we implement anything that comes out of that study. But this is also kind of a parallel process, but just on the commercial and industrial side of it, to help us move forward, identify our strengths and weaknesses. And I know, Jerry, in our comp plan, we didn't really have any policy specific to the healthcare and medical fields. And I know that we have Christy Ward here from WANA, and I know Scott Spence and Matt Brandmeier have joined us from City of Astoria, and we haven't heard from any of them yet. So I'd be curious about what they are thinking.
Great call out. Now we put you on the spot for the healthcare position, or at least perspective. Are there things the county could be doing more, or what are your specific issues operating in the county that you find either challenging or opportunities for you?
Yeah, and maybe Eric, you want to talk just a little bit about the expansion that you have planned and your impact on the community and economy?
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for that question. I mean, looking at the data that was in that early slide about the growth in healthcare, it was predicting, I think, 380 jobs over a 10-year period in those, 4 counties that were represented. We've done more than that at just CMH alone over the past 10 years. And the project and the expansion that we're contemplating right now will certainly grow our footprint, allow us to bring, some additional services, specialties to this community that will certainly continue. I mean, I don't know if it'll be at the same, growth rate that we've seen over the past decade at CMH, but it has a potential to bring a significant number of new jobs to the community in the healthcare industry. So balancing out, I can't give you an exact, estimate. I can give you some idea of what we're anticipating in the first couple of years. But the long run with this expansion project over the next decade should be pretty dramatic in the healthcare sector, at least in this county.
Do you guys have sites available or appropriate sites or land area or capacity for that expansion that you're expecting?
We do. We have a site in Astoria that we're contemplating a very significant expansion to the existing hospital. And then we have a 7 3/4 acre parcel in Warrenton in the business park that is also slated for a medical office expansion after the work in Astoria is done.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully those sites will show up in the BLI, or at least the capacity, and then we can try to allocate some of that growth to that and, better understand that, so we're not counting it for someone else to use it.
Yeah, and if you want estimates from us, I mean, we can do some of that work. We have some of that done already, like I said, for the first couple of years of this expansion. But happy to share more details with you guys offline about our expansion plans and project that's underway right now.
Yeah, that'd be great. Be very interested in getting that. Obviously, you'll know more than this State Employment Department about what your expectations are going forward.
Yeah.
Melanie?
I'm looking at your general policies and goals there, and there's a special call out for prioritizing telecommunications. But I'm wondering if the county should include something around septage management and wastewater management.
Oh.
Right now, not to take us down this path, but right now the septic haulers transport all of the unincorporated community waste to City of Rainier, and the City of Rainier has capacity and treatment issues. And if that goes away, there will be no place for those homeowners to take their septage, which will significantly impact, of course, housing development, but then also thinking about the commercial and industrial lands piece of this. And we have all of these industries touch, and all of future uses touch wastewater in one way, shape, or form, and our infrastructure is, I think, in many areas to deal with that. And so, what does that solution look like, and where does it fit? Just thinking about seafood and brewery waste and renewable energy, and the septage, and where can that waste go? And I think City of Seaside has what do you do, Spencer? You guys have some sort of land application that you use, and what does that look like in the next 20 years?
Is that a question to Spencer directly? You know
Is
what?
that a question for me, Melanie?
Well, just more of a statement. So, I mean, is that adequate based on Seaside's growth over 20 years? Are you going to be looking for land in the unincorporated areas? Is that still going to be an option in 20 years also, or will the city need more land?
And the tough thing for us is geographically, there's not a whole lot of options for us.
I would definitely agree with Melanie's comment about wastewater across the county. We've been having conversations about infrastructure, and I recognize the jurisdictional boundaries of a county plan versus the municipalities therein. But Astoria, Warrenton, Seaside, Cannon Beach, I think everyone in the county has these issues. And if there was, I know that folks have been looking into anaerobic digester and other energy producing remedies to that problem. And so if we're just kind of adding everything to the hat, I do think in the marine world, there are regulations they're facing in regards to their emissions. and some refitting that needs to happen in a couple different industries in the marine world. But I'm also assuming that most folks on this call are getting another call later. So I don't know how in detailed you wanted to get, but I support what Melanie said.
All right. Good. That's actually great. This is the first one we dealt with that has a septic wastewater component, but it sounds like it's a pretty, since you've got a lot of, water quality issues and DEQ issues, and sometimes those are things that are well suited for regional solutions in any case, because you've got a lot of smaller jurisdictions in here. So that's actually really helpful now that we've gone into the waste stream. So I appreciate that, Melanie. So are there specific target industries that either Colpack or Business Oregon are looking at that they feel like there's real potential with the North Oregon coast that aren't identified?
Well, I would say, as the director of CEDAR, that there's a lot of folks that have like relocated here over the last year or so. Like, for example, out of Portland and Multnomah County.
Right.
And people that where you could remote workers, if you will, but higher wage earners. And we've seen that like in the city of Gerhardt and like their water usage, et cetera. And I think the number was like 152, if I remember right, from the Oregonian recently, about 152 individuals that make over $250,000 a year have relocated to Clatsop County over the last year. As Multnomah counties, they've scattered to Clark County, whatever. So thinking about that also from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
Okay, that's a good one.
I think you covered most of them. I would second Chris's notation of the fermentation industry, and just manufacturing opportunities at large, especially, and that relates to, forestry, fermentation, entrepreneurship.
Right.
I mean, I'll also speak up about, we've talked about like a Tongue Point, Sarah Lou's mentioned, et cetera, like with the 1,500-ton electric lift that's going to be installed this next summer, and be an enterprise manager for the county and all the processes we went through, what that's going to mean for our economy and for our jobs. And here, as part of the college, Kevin Lacoste had to step out for a minute, but welders and all of those CTE needs that we're going to have that we have to address for the college in terms of being a trainer. But that's really something that's like kind of a secret sauce thing for what's going to happen, here in Clatsop County, that North Tongue Point development. And of course, there's Coast Guard, and I mean all the things that are huge employers here in our county as well that we can never lose sight of. But
right.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Kevin. The military is one that we want to call out. Coast Guard and also Camp Riley sits squarely in our county. So there's a presence and there's a high value in having that presence and having it grow.
And also mention sometimes those charts, unfortunately, that 5-county region is quoted, it includes Benton County. And It's just always very difficult when you try to sift through that because we're that, they're kind of the driver. And it really skews a lot of the numbers.
Yeah, that's a very strange labor market area that they did, but I guess they didn't know.
We've done some standalone things in Clatsop County. I'm sure we could ask for hybrids as part of this process that have been done.
Well, we've actually requested, we're going to get the QCW data specific so we can sort it by geography. So that's hopefully all coming through now. The applications were made to the state, so data should be coming. All right, does anyone have anything else on industries, things that are missing that we want to make sure we touch on? If you think of something late, you can always get a hold of us later too. So this isn't like you have multiple shops that not just to set meetings, but if you want to circle back and you think of something suddenly that'd be great if the county did, or we might want to make sure we cover this industry, we can still get things in.
So Jerry, I know that of the 500 million people I invited to be a part of this committee, a representative from the port is not here today, and nobody from the timber industry was able to be here today. So we are missing some very important segments as well. And not to call anybody out, but if Christy is available, I would be very interested in hearing what challenges or opportunities WANA is facing, because they are not only one of the largest employers, but they're also in unincorporated Clatsop County and not within an urban growth boundary. So.
Yes. So I think it's consistent with what other people have said. Definitely employment is the biggest issue. So we are seeing a lot less employees from Clatsop County. We're hiring much more out of Cowlitz County now, actually, across the river. So of course, then the Longview Bridge becomes an issue and different things like that. So I definitely see ODOT cutting down on services as an issue for us, as we have more of our employees going over Clatskanie Hill to get here, but that is in Columbia County, obviously. But I think that's our biggest thing is there's definitely a housing issue in Clatsop County. When our people relocate here, I don't think very many are actually going into Astoria due to the housing prices. And another issue is definitely in law enforcement on Highway 30. And, I've talked to some of the state police, and a lot of them have mentioned that they're trying to relocate because of the housing issue in Clatsop County also. And that's an issue in Columbia County too. So.
Okay. I guess you're so close to them. There's a lot of relatively inexpensive housing just across the river. So I guess this is always one of the issues you run into with the goal nines, because they separate goal nines and goal 10, the housing and employment. Housing is critical to employment as far as supporting employment, but they're dealt with as two separate issues, and it's just structurally been that way for a long time. But certainly we can call out, and I think it was appropriate for the county to call out support for the housing plan as part of their economic development strategy to try to get more housing in there. The difficulty where your plant is there's just not a lot of residential capacity near there either, is there? I'm missing something. I'm just thinking.
No, so we're kind of in a weird situation where we're in Clatsop County, but really all of our services come from Columbia County. So when people move in the schools in Clatskanie, it's not, in Clatsop County. All of our resources, our fire departments in Clatskanie, our PUDs in Clatskanie. So people tend to want to be there. There's some land in Westport, but we don't have a great deal of employees from Westport because it's mainly a retired community. We used to, but I think there's a lot of retirees and stuff in Westport. So,
Brett?
So, in response to some of Christy's comments about housing in Columbia County, Jerry, if in working on this, if you want to, maybe facilitate a conversation with me and maybe even Sarah Lou, because Columbia County is receiving a DLCD housing grant, which is going to further a study that they completed last year to start implementing some of the tasks in their housing production strategy that was already developed, and some of it is focused on Rainier, which is closer over to the facility, to the WANA facility. The one thing that's a little bit of an issue is that there is a potential for an economic development project near Rainier, and they're having to ramp up in Columbia County if that project happens for the additional housing needs that's going to come out of that additional economic development project in Columbia County.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it would be something even for this plan, but Highway 30 is a definite issue for our facility. When there is an accident and the highway's closed, before we would have enough staffing, we could call people from the other side and have them come in. We're a 24-hour operation, and you don't just shut down a pulp mill. There's processes and procedures and stuff like that. You just can't turn it off. And so it is a huge issue for us. Anytime the Highway 30 is closed on either side of us, it doesn't matter. It becomes a huge issue trying to get staffing and stuff in to fill the roles and stuff. So I don't know if that's something that would be in this plan. Probably not. I know it's a state highway, but it's definitely an issue for us, where before, when we could, we had a lot more staffing options and stuff. It wasn't as big of an issue, but it's a definite issue.
Good. Can always take a shot at ODOT. It's always fair game. Nothing else we can call it out as a specific issue that the county should be monitoring and maybe lobbying for, just to make sure that Highway 30, which is obviously one of the key connectors throughout the county, is getting regular maintenance. Do they have a lot of closures on Highway 30? I don't take it very often, so is that a fairly common issue?
Yes, it is.
Yes, there's always accidents on it.
Yeah, or a landslide, or something will happen, a bridge closure, different things. But definitely, if the county could get Highway 30, right now it's considered like a level B highway. If they could get it to be a level A service highway, that would be great. Because right now all the resources, during a winter storm or something like that, because we've got to keep operating, otherwise we'll freeze. We got to keep the mill warm and stuff. The resources go to level A, Portland, and that sort of thing is how they operate. So, and ours, we haven't seen it yet, but they're reducing services to this highway, they've announced.
Okay, good. Well, that sounds like actually a tangible goal to go after as well, at least to lobby for. All right, and I don't know if someone else feels like, I want to make sure we've gotten everybody feedback from everyone who really wants to make sure they give feedback.
Yeah, I know the city of Astoria, they've been pretty quiet. I don't know if they have anything they wanted to add.
This is where I say no.
You can.
I think that's where you say Matt.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, we'll have much more to talk about the next meeting. Next meeting, you'll have a lot of data and a lot of things to look at, which should help prompt more responses. It's hard to do these things cold anyways. And so in the interim, we'll be working, and then it won't be till after the holidays that we get this group together again. Hopefully all the data is in soon so we can get everything processed and done before our next meeting, but we should be underway. I know Brian's got the GIS contacts at the county now, so we get the BLI piece started as well. And understand the next time we show you, we'll have a lot of data, but we'll really need your help to interpret. So that'll be the one we'll be asking for more direct participation in. And maybe hopefully we'll get the wood products industry here too as well.
Okay, and then just as follow up on my end, I'll be posting the meeting recording on our website, and I'll send that link out to everyone. And then in a few weeks, we'll work on scheduling a meeting probably towards the end of January, beginning of February, I think was the time frame we were looking at. And then in the meantime, if you think of anything that you want me to relay over to Jerry, or you've got any information, or I've left somebody off the list that you think needs to be involved, just please let me know and I'll get in touch with them. So thank you.
Great. Thanks everybody for your time. And we'll talk to you after the holidays, I guess. You beforehand. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.